Alright, to make sure that this doesn't move on the camera body, I'll put a couple of drops of lacquer here, here, here and here where it's going to fit. That'll stop it sliding about. Dropping the screws in from the top. And that screw in place. And the same for its mate. That screw's falling down sideways. Okay, tip that out. Do it again. That's better. Tighten those two screws up. Normally I pull the rangefinder body back towards the back of the camera so it's hard against its stop, which keeps it parallel and just gives it a fixed reliable position. I'll get these two screws tightened up. That screwdriver's a bit big for these screws. That's it. Alright, I'm going to check my alignment. Looking out the window. Horizontal alignment's good. My vertical alignment is reasonably well out. Slacken that front screw off slightly, tighten the rear screw, which will lower the moving image, which is now too low. I did say it's easy to go past the point you need to be at. Yeah, too low, too low. Close but no cigar. You'd think I was going the wrong way here, the way it's going. Oh, now we're on it. Okay, I've got that good. My horizontal alignment is fine on an infinity image, but it gets there too quickly. So basically I've got to slacken that screw off and swing this in slightly so that it lifts off the stop a bit earlier. Yeah, we went well past where I needed to be there. Oh, okay, that just moved a lot. That's going to be too far the other way now. Well, it's not very far, too far. Some of these adjustments, if you think you've moved them, you've probably moved it too far. They're very subtle. This is one of them. That seems very good. I'll just lock the adjustment and make sure it hasn't moved. It did move. Sometimes when you lock the adjustment, things will shift slightly. That's just one of those things. No, that's good now. So my alignment is good. I'm quite happy with the state of that rangefinder. Alright, well, let's carry on with the rest of this job. Clean up this meter. I'm having a look at this. Normally if the meter appears to work fairly well, there's nothing more to be done with it. There's nothing to adjust in there. If it reads low or it reads, well, typically it reads low, that means your selenium cell is failing. There's nothing to be done about that either. The fact that the selenium cell is still working 60 years after it was made is a minor miracle. Just be thankful it does anything at all. Some of these are still accurate. Some are not. I'm just cleaning the glass on the top here with a bit of glass cleaner. This meter appears to work quite well. I'll have a look at the front of it. And the honeycomb cup piece here, that looks nice and clean. That's plastic. Don't get any solvent on that. Occasionally you'll see these and that's just a translucent. Vaguely translucent, and it's because someone has taken some solvent and tried to clean it and ruined it. Don't be that person. Okay, so that meter looks fine. That's ready to go on the camera body. So we can do that. I'll remove my rubber band, much though I'm hesitant to do so. Before I put the meter in place, let's do another couple of things. A drop of lacquer on that screw. To encourage it not to come loose. Put a bit of synthetic grease on the rack here. Make sure there's some at the rear there. And a wipe on that arm wouldn't hurt. That looks good. And everything there was left tight. Good. The meter loosely in place. I want my film release button. Wipe through the whole of that with some molybdenum paste. Put its spring on, put that in position, put the meter in place and put the two screws in that hold the meter. Checking shutter release and the film release button appear to move freely, and they do. Okay, at that point we're good. The shutter release can't fall out of the body because the shutter release shaft is held in by the meter. And put the button on the top there. That needs the top cover, which I haven't cleaned yet. Let's do that. Here's the top cover. I'll take the shoe off. 3 chromed screws, easily damaged. Be careful not to slip. Put that to one side. The meter dial here I want off because it's sticky with grease. And this tool, which I use for doing the rewind knob and so forth, also fits the spacing of these pins here. These screws are very delicate. They're only chrome brass. If you over tighten it, you'll snap it. If you snap it, there are no replacements. They're not the same as the screws on the top of the Retina reflex cameras. You can't steal one of those to use for that purpose. Right, so the top of this top cover here, where this meter knob goes, this is sticky old grease. I want rid of that. This is a good example. This one's quite clean. It's not uncommon for these to be dirty with thick dark brown black grease, lots of dust and rubbish. This one is comparatively clean, but the grease has dried out over time, so it's not as free moving as it used to be. It's changed from being a lubricant to being a handbrake. Okay, well, I'll clean this top cover up. I'm just using some Naphtha here. I'm cleaning the metal surface. I'm staying away from the window. You don't want to be wiping anything onto that window if you can avoid it. I'll use glass cleaner on that when I've got everything else ready. This is quite clean. It's not uncommon for cameras to have a layer of filth all along here where this top sets down into that chrome trim, and that'll be just dust and dirt, moisture, finger grease, all sorts of wonderful things like that. That's looking pretty good. Bit of grit there, let's get rid of that. Right, I want the glass out of this to clean. I'll unhook this arm from the frame counter, the spring. Remove that from the bracket. 2 screws hold this mask in place, and the mask holds the rangefinder, well, both pieces of glass at the front there for the viewfinder. This one's just held in a bit firmer with the bracket at the other end. So I'll just clean this top cover on the inside with a bit of naphtha. Basically, I just want to make sure that there's no grease, particularly around the glass windows, because otherwise you can be sure that you'll clean your glass, put it back in, and then the greasy rubbish will transfer allegiance to the clean glass as soon as your back's turned. Just make sure this is clean. The frame counter here, I'm making sure that moves freely. It does. There's nothing obviously wrong with that. We'll leave that alone. If they're stiff, there's 2 reasons, well, there's multiple reasons why it might be stiff. One is if the grease has just dried out and gone sticky. You can loosen it up with a bit of naphtha, flush it out. Another is if it's got grit in there. That's not uncommon. The window's open at the top, and if grit's got in there, that can make it stiff. Again, you can flush that out with naphtha and a lot of compressed air, that'll shift it. And the third one is if the top's been distorted. If this has been pushed in, there'll be undue friction under here because it's not running against nice flat surfaces anymore. That's more of a problem and it's harder to deal with. But we don't have any of those problems. This is all good. So the viewfinder glass here at the back, the eyepiece glass, I'm cleaning that with a bit of glass cleaner. Oh, that's a fly hanging around that's singing the song. It's singing that special "Come Here and Spray Me Until I'm Dead" song. It'll get its wish shortly. Right, that looks good. The meter window, be a bit gentle with this. If you break it, it's exceptionally awkward to replace. It's held in with a plate here which is riveted on, and the rivets are absolutely tiny. If you get them off, you never get them back on. You have to make new rivets. Of course, you might cheat and use some other method, like just gluing a piece of glass on from underneath. I don't judge. The problem with cleaning any piece of glass in a position like this is if there's any hint of a smear of grease anywhere, you'll just end up dragging it from one end of the glass to the other. You can never seem to see the back of it, particularly if it's sandwiched between two layers of the mechanism. Okay, that looks good. I'm quite happy with the state of that. So I'll just clean this other stuff up and put it back on the top. The frame here, I just need to give that a quick wipe with Naphtha to remove any oil or contaminants on it, any dust or other rubbish. Usually there's not much wrong with this. That looks fine to me. Likewise, those two aluminium standoffs. Mostly cleaning those in case there's oil or something sitting on there waiting to ooze out at a later date. And the glass. Now these two pieces of glass are quite grimy. Now having said that, they're not bad examples by any means. It's normal for them to be quite grimy. And so I'm just cleaning those with some glass cleaner. And typically you need to give them a couple of sessions to get rid of it. That glass isn't even clear, it's just about brown with the grime. This glass is nice, so I can tell that when they made this the edges were polished, so they're not polishing the edges on glass like that makes it less fragile. Okay, that looks good. So I'll just give them one more clean and reassemble those. Okay, well I'll start putting some of this stuff back together. So I'll put a wipe of synthetic grease around the inside of this meter setting knob. And just check that that moves smoothly. Hang on a minute. Right, back to what we were doing. Put some synthetic grease on that wavy washer. This disc only goes on in one place. It's their film speed disc. It can't be shifted, it's not adjustable. Put that top piece on there. And see if we can get this screw down in place. Check that that disc is moving freely, making sure it's seated correctly. Tighten the screw lightly. As I said, they're very delicate. If you overdo it, it'll snap and you'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Right, put the 3 screws in the accessory shoe. That looks good. Now the glass. The glass I have carefully cleaned. This piece I put in first because it's held by that edge of the frame quite well. I'm going to put the two little aluminium standoffs in here. Why they used two pieces instead of making one thick one will be forever one of life's mysteries. I just did it to be awkward. And get the screw down through that with a bit of luck. Get the other screw in place. Now I'm not tightening those up. I just want them in place because I've got to have that mask swing back at this point so I can slide the other piece of glass into that frame. That's sitting correctly in place. Now making sure that the glass at this end is sitting correctly in place. It's not at the moment, now it is. Holding that mask firmly to the front of the camera without getting my fingers on the glass. Tighten those two screws up. That's my two windows in place. Let me blow the dust out of that. Alright, let's clean that piece of glass because I can see I've already got a fingerprint on it. Some days you just can't win. Yep, that's good. Okay, so that's in place. The glass is in place, everything else is in place. I need to put this spring back in place for the frame counter. Stretch that out and hook it into position. Unfortunately it keeps rotating, that's better, that's in position. So the frame counter is moving nicely. Top cover is ready to go on the camera. Any last dust or smears on the finder, make sure they're all gone. That's all looking good. Meter's looking good. Let's put the top cover on. Making sure that's seated. Now what I'm interested in is watching the frame counter and making sure it moves one frame at a time, not two, and the numbers are lined up well. It's looking pretty good. Let's just move it around and try a few more. Yep. That appears to work nicely. So, put some screws in this top cover. Now I'm not going to fit the rewind at this stage because I'm most likely going to have to come back in and adjust the release, the screw on the top of the release lever so that the shutter and the film advance release at the same point in the stroke of the shutter release. And that I can only do once the shutter is all back on the camera. Okay, so that's enough. I've got a couple of screws in the top cover to keep it there. The body is otherwise done. I haven't done the leatherette on the base of the body yet. Oh, we'll do that now. Let's have a look at this leatherette. Now, there's quite a bit of rubbish on this. Now, some of that is corrosion products from the aluminium body, all that centre part there. Some of it's probably just dried adhesive and other rubbish. I'm going to scrape off all the lumps and bumps. You can be a bit cautious about doing this because you can, if the leatherette's in a bad condition or it's got a crack or something, you can tear it in half with a bit of injudicious scraping. So I'm taking care not to overdo it. Right, that surface I want to wipe with a bit of naphtha. I wouldn't use anything stronger than that typically. Just to remove any oils or grease or loose dust or other rubbish that might affect the way the adhesive sticks it. That's all looking pretty good. I can see a low spot here. Now that's where there's a ice bump on the other side. And that is over where that bronze screw head was. That'll be why there's a Zeiss bump there, because the other screws are of course nickel plated. They're less likely to cause Zeiss bumps than just something that was brass or bronze. Okay, so that's looking good. That leatherette looks nice. Let's go mad and put it on the camera while the going's good. So I'll bring my camera body back in here. Remove the film advance lever. And this, of course, I've cleaned up completely. That doesn't mean there won't be greasy fingerprints on here from handling. It would have adversely affect the adhesive, so I'm just giving that a wipe with some naphtha again. That was good. And I've got some adhesive, so let's get a toothpick. I'll just splop some adhesive on there and then move it around to where I want it with the toothpick. Now I don't want this getting on the front face of the leatherette. Some of these leatherettes, the plastic is unusually sensitive to solvent, so it's worth keeping any adhesive on the back only. In other cases it doesn't cause any problems at all, and if there's a bit of spillage it can be wiped off with no adverse effects, but that is not universal. So better safe than sorry. Right. So I've got my adhesive on there without getting it spread all over the front surface, which is what we wanted, and I can put this in place on the camera body. Now the leatherettes almost always have shrunken over time. They do not want to sit down neatly over raised bosses like here and here, so you may have to guide them into position, effectively stretching them out. What's that there? Rubbish on the surface. We'll have that off. And that little Zeiss bump there is probably going to stick up all the time. We'll see if we can encourage that down. That's looking good. You get my film advance lever back on there. That's not picking up the screw holes, is that moved? Hang on. That lever's popped back out of place. I think we're good to go. I don't think that can revolve back too far. No, that's good. Always going to be a bit cautious about some of these things. Sometimes if the advance lever is removed, the rack will roll back far enough to disengage with the gear on the top, and then you've got a nuisance situation where you've got to start putting things back together again. Right, so the little Leatherette patch on the base of the film advance lever, that needs to be glued in place. And this, being much smaller, I'm not going to apply a blob directly to it. I'll apply some to the paper and transfer it. Now the Leatherette does have a pattern. This is the piece that's damaged, isn't it? This is the one with the letter L on it. I might see if I can find a replacement for that. Still don't know why somebody would do a stupid thing like that. Alright, let me find another piece of leatherette for that one.